What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Random Redshirt Podcast. I am one of the hosts, Zach, and with me, as always, is Chris, the other host. What's up, buddy?
Hello, Zach. Great to see you again, my great friend. Great to be here. Hello, everyone around the world, around the interwebs, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
Excellent.
this is great. So, we are here for episode number 2 of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Ad Astra per Aspera to the stars through difficulties, and we look forward to bringing you another deep dive here as we continue on in season 2 of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. But before we get to that, if you have never listened to us before, or if you have, we do appreciate it as always. But don't forget to head over to Instagram, Facebook, check us out there, follow us for upcoming announcements and or funny memes, things that we post on there all the time. But that's really your best source to get latest announcements and upcoming guests and series reviews and all that kind of stuff that we talk about. So be sure to go there and check that out. If you are listening to us, you can find us also on YouTube for a video version of this. We have a lot of episodes on YouTube, but not all of our episodes. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we have many other ones that we recorded only in audio back in the day. So be sure to go check those out wherever you get your podcast, whatever your favorite podcast platform is. We are probably there. With that being said, Chris, yeah, we are jumping into episode number 2 of Strange New Worlds. I don't think in our first review, I don't think we did we gave any kind of a 1 to 5 comm badge rating for the first episode. I was
No, we,
thinking
we
about that
didn't.
the other day.
Yeah, I think that's okay though, because I'm letting it all kind of settle and still think about it, right? So, I'm still thinking about like, what I would review it because it's helpful. It's helpful for me to have all of the episodes together in context and you're kind of thinking about it as a whole too. So
Yeah.
I totally think that's okay. It's all good.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No worries. I was just thinking about that. But that being said,
Yeah.
before we get into the actual review of the episode, I thought, it would kind of make sense. And I know we kind of talked about this before. So we thought it'd be a good idea to maybe kind of bring back in some of the Star Trek episodes that are out there that deal with like trials and courts and things like that, because there actually are quite a few. As I was doing some research, Chris, I found there's actually a lot more than I had remembered
Oh
going
man,
through all
yeah.
this.
You totally like read my mind because like as I was thinking about this latest episode of Strange New Worlds, I was thinking, that's right. It's absolutely Star Trek because there are so many trials throughout all of the great different series of Star Trek. So
Yeah, well, we were
are,
talking on the
yeah.
phone the other day, and you
Yeah.
brought that up, and I was like, we should go back and look up some of the different episodes that have trials and courtroom scenes and so forth, and kind of maybe briefly go through those to kind of get us ready for this episode. And so we're just going to kind of really quickly run through some ones that we found, and if you are thinking of some, or there's an episode where there's some type of court or court martial or trial or inquiry or anything that we're missing, please let us know in the comments below or hit us up on one of our social media pages. But that being said, Chris, we'll kind of start it out here. In the original series, we get the very first Star Trek court or trial, right? And that's the episode Court Martial, obviously, which is kind of appropriate given the name of the episode. And that's where Captain Kirk is wrongfully accused of the death of Lieutenant Finney, who I think was a red shirt, although don't quote me on that. Um, he might not have been. I don't remember off the top of my head. Maybe he was. Maybe he had a mustard gold, but he, of course, it was also proven he's actually still alive, so it didn't happen. But that was a pretty intense episode.
It was, and that was they were going through an ion storm, right? I believe it was something like that, and
Yeah.
he was blamed. Captain Kirk was blamed for ejecting the pod, something like that, and so that I thought that was great. Spock was Kirk's terrific advocate because Spock was like saying, no, Kirk could never make a mistake like that. You know what
Yeah.
I loved about that episode was, or this is kind of funny, where Captain Kirk is taking the stand and there's this long list of they read about Captain Kirk and there's this long list of awards and honors he's gone on to to get in his career. I like that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's Kirk, right? He's
Yeah,
one of the most distinguished, if not the most distinguished captain in Starfleet at the time.
yeah,
So it kind of makes sense, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Um, what's the next thing that we can look to as far as trials or courts in Star Trek?
Yeah, so many trials, so many courts, but we've got a Klingon court. So not only do we have Starfleet courts, we get to see the breadth of different courts throughout
Yeah.
throughout, throughout the Star Trek galaxy. We've got a Klingon court in Star Trek Six. There was that great court scene with Kirk and McCoy, where they were tried for killing Chancellor Gorkon, and I believe their attorney was that was Worf, right?
I think it was like a
Grand,
grandfather, some
yeah,
great grandfather, or something like that, right? Yeah, yeah. It
yeah.
looked just like Michael Dorn because it was Michael
It
Dorn.
was Michael Jordan. So that was a great one. Then we've got more. We've got plenty more. What else? What else do we have?
Yeah, TNG was full of them. The first two that I can think of would be, of course, the pilot, right, from TNG, and that is Encounter at Farpoint, where humanity is put on trial by Q, and it's the trial has only just begun, right, or something like that. The second one I had thought of was one that we have mentioned several times in the podcast, one episode that I'm a big fan of, and that is the episode of TNG called The Measure of a Man, and that's where Data's sentient status is put on a trial. And
Yeah,
whether or not he is just a bucket of bolts that belongs to Starfleet, or whether he is legitimately a sentient life form who should be protected and have the same rights and privileges as anybody else in Starfleet. He's not Starfleet property. He is his own sentient life form.
yeah,
And I have a feeling at some point down the road, Chris, we'll have to do a deep dive of that episode because I think there's a lot to unpack in that episode. And it's certainly one of my favorite from the entire TNG series.
yeah. Absolutely. That'd be a great opportunity to deep dive in there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Give,
Yeah,
give us a couple more from TNG.
yeah. TNG, we've got tons. We've got one with Worf where he's tried for his father's sins and sins of the
Yeah.
father. We had a really good one that I feel it's really good called the Drumhead. And so that's where they're looking for a possible saboteur aboard the Enterprise. And we find out, they're accusing, this is actually very similar to the Strange New Worlds episode, but they're accusing an
Yeah.
individual, a crewman named Simon Tarsus, I believe his name is, and Captain Picard, of being Romulan collaborators. And Simon had lied on his application to the Federation, actually, about his ethnicity. So actually,
Yeah, because he's
oh,
part
yeah,
Romulan, isn't he? He's
yeah,
got
he's
some
part
Romulan
Romulan.
in him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I believe that he pawns it off as being part Vulcan, right? Because they're very similar. I want
yeah,
to say
yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a great episode.
Yeah, Picard actually has a great he has just a great monologue or a response to the opposing attorney. I don't remember if she's an attorney or a judge, but what he says is beautiful. We also have we've got the first duty. That's one where the cadets were questioned during an inquiry where they did some band maneuvers. And I saw those were like hot dog cadets, right? If I remember correctly, when they were trying to
Yeah,
protect
and
each
in
other.
fact,
Yeah.
one of the characters is not Tom Paris, but it was played by a younger Robbie Duncan McNeil, who plays Tom
Yes.
Paris in Voyager, and he's like the leader of this group, and they're supposed to be out doing maneuvers. I think it's around. I want to say it's around one of Saturn's moons, maybe, or Jupiter's moons. And there's an accident, and the guy who was flying really shouldn't have been flying. And they kind of pushed it anyways, and so Wesley Crusher, Cadet Crusher, is involved in that,
Yeah.
and Picard and his mom are deeply disappointed by his decisions to lie about things and not talk about it, and then he has to kind of finally come free. And it's a very much an idea of integrity and honor that it deals with in that episode.
Yeah, that was great. Great point, Zach. Great point. Then we've got even a few in DS9. Your favorite. You
Yeah.
wanna talk about some of the ones in DS9?
Yeah, absolutely. With DS9, one I actually watched in the last couple of months, an episode called Tribunal, which kind of makes sense. And now we get a chance to actually see and not just hear about, but actually see the Cardassian process for trying and convicting people. Because as we know from DS9, that the Cardassian legal system is kind of more for show,
Yeah.
right? And that people are they're basically predetermined, pre-tried, they're convicted, and it's all put on display in order to give the Cardassians, hope and and trust in the justice system. And it's all a charade, right? But O'Brien's tried and convicted for supposedly collaborating with the Maquis. And of course, the Maquis and the Kardashians don't exactly see eye to eye. So there's that one. There's also an episode called Rules of Engagement. So Worf is back on trial again, but this time not for his father. He's put on trial after destroying a civilian shuttle during some scuffle with the Klingons. And whether or not, he did it intentionally or whether it was, an accident and all that stuff. And so it's a very interesting episode, especially because the prosecutor that's trying to get him convicted is also a Klingon. And the man who's defending Worf, his counsel is Captain Sisko. So it's a very interesting episode. And you see more into the Klingon side of the legal system and how they see things. Because you don't when you think Klingon, you don't initially think lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly, top of the list. So very interesting episode there. Okay. Next, there was one in particular I think we kind of both thought of when it came to Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah. This was I think we may have even talked about this a while ago, but this one called Death Wish, where
Yep.
where it's a hearing conducted for someone within the Q continuum, and the right for suicide, essentially. And so that was a very, very, I want to, reflecting back on it, that was a heavy episode and a very critical one for Q, in the Q continuum. So
yeah,
that was heavy. And then some others that this refreshed my memory, like in Enterprise, we had Judgment. And so on that one, Archer was on trial for aiding the escape of some refugees. So we had that one. And looks like we even got some trial episodes in some of the new series too. And this one I didn't know about at all. So it looks like we did some good research here. I haven't actually seen this episode, but we've got some trial episodes in Lower Decks too. So that one looks like Captain Freeman is put on trial. What's up with this with all the captains being put on trial?
Right. It's almost like it's a rite of passage or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like it could be like a sub-series, like Star Trek Law and Order.
or what would it be? What would it be like? FCIS, Federation CIS, yes, whatever. Yeah. Yes. One of these many iterations of these Law and Order shows. Yeah. Law and Order, Starfleet or something.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That Law and Order Starfleet. That's good.
Like that. Yeah. Hey, that could be a future streaming show. You never know. Marry the two together, have like some crossover action going on here. But
awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, there are a lot. We may have forgotten some. These are some of the ones that came to mind and ones that we kind of looked up. But in general, there's quite a few, and there's a lot of law and judgment and trials and court martials and inquiries and hearings and all this other crazy stuff going on in Star Trek. But now let's turn our attention to what we're really here for, which is Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 2, Ad Astra per Aspera, which is translated to the stars through difficulties, apparently, is what we're told in the episode. And for the second episode in a row, Chris, I don't know if you noticed this, but for the second episode in a row, we get very little Captain Pike again and a lot more other character building with these, I don't want to call them supporting characters because Pike is not necessarily just the star of the show. I mean, I know he's a captain, but you have other main characters too, like the other series. So I don't necessarily want to call them supporting characters, but I didn't exactly have the best word to come up with this. So for the lack of better terms, I'll say supporting characters. We get a lot more of the additional, maybe the other bridge crew characters or the other main characters besides just the captain. I don't know if you noticed that, but this is 2 episodes in a row now where Pike has not had a very big role in either episode.
Yeah, I did notice, and I'm glad that it was kind of like that, right? You get to explore these the characters and the personalities and the depth of each of these individuals that's on the bridge that makes up the unique, and kind of diverse and this great collective of the Enterprise crew. So I think it's great that they did that. And I love the title, by the way, through to the stars through difficulty, Ad Astra per Aspera. I think it's beautiful. I love that title. and
Yeah.
I was thinking this episode was going to be mostly about number one, mostly about Una. I didn't know how you felt about two, but I thought, okay, this one's probably going to be about her because in episode one, Pike was going to go. Pike left so he could go uh, take care of her, found out a way to take care of her. So this makes sense that this was totally about her.
Yeah, and I know, when we talked at the very beginning uh of our review of season one of season two, episode one, or at some point during the review, we talked about some uh looking forward to the rest of the season, right? And I think we even talked about this at the end of our season one review, maybe, where we talked about some things that we're looking forward to, things that we have some kind of expectations for season two. I think one of the expectations was, given the final episode of season one, which I believe was A Quality of Mercy. I think that was the final episode. That was the name of it. We expected this to eventually happen, right? Because the season ends with Una being, you know, taken taken away in metaphorical cuffs, right? She's been arrested and taken away. So we knew this was coming. It's just a matter of when. And we're getting it very early on here in the second episode. And so yes, I think this was expected. One of the questions I had when season one ended was, how long are we going to have to wait before we see what happens to Una? Is she going to be in a Federation prison for a while, like for several months before, months as far as the time of the show, before we get to see what happens to her? Do we have a trial that goes on for maybe a couple of episodes? Because so far, Strange New Worlds has had no two-parters,
Mm-hmm.
right? They've just been those individual episodic style.
Yeah, you're right. And I think the episodic style and the one part episodes essentially, or the one episode stories, has served it well. And I think that this was good that they pretty much went direct to exploring what happened to Una and Una's predicament and how she gets out early on in season two. This episode two, going directly there, and let's explore it. Let's find it. Let's find out. Let's take care of it. So I thought that was good. I if it had drug out like a few more episodes, I think that probably for both you and I, we would have been talking about that. That might have bothered us a bit.
Yeah. Now, really quickly, just because that's on my mind,
Mhm.
do you think that Strange New World should stay away from doing any multi-part episodes and just be single episodes, or should there be? But is there potential for there to be maybe a two-parter at some point, or a multi-part episode at some point in this series, whether it's this season or a future season?
Yeah, great question. I think they're okay if they decide to do a two-parter, just like some of TNG's. There were a few parter there were a few two-parters in TNG as well. And
Yeah.
TNG was very much had standalone episodes throughout. Now, probably, in my opinion, probably they should not do as many two-parters as Voyager, because Voyager had a lot of different two-parters.
But Voyager had some really good two-parters, though. We got it. Remember, we talked about that in
Yeah,
our review, man. Voyager, I will tell you, they did a lot of, but you're right. But I think we can agree that a lot of their two-parters are really fantastic.
they were fantastic. Yes, yes, absolutely. Um,
Yeah. So
good
I
question.
think you're right, Chris. I think there's room for it, but I'll be curious to see if they do any two-parters, what that would be. For me personally, if I could choose, I would say the best idea, in my opinion, for doing a two-parter would be something around the Gorn, right? Having that cliffhanger at the end of part one, where like, oh, is this main character gonna die? Because I mean, they killed Hemmer off in season one, spoiler. And so, or is the main character gonna survive? Because we've seen that in Star Trek before, right? Where they tease like they're gonna kill some main character off, and then of course they typically don't, usually. So I could see maybe something around the Gorn being up like a cliffhanging two-parter.
I agree with you.
So
I
yeah,
think the
we'll
Gorn's a great opportunity. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay, let's jump into this.
yeah,
So, Chris, the beginning of this episode I found fascinating because we jump into it with a flashback.
yeah. Flashback with Una's childhood, and looked like she had a broken leg, and her parents are, concerned because they don't want to take her to a doctor where they'll find out that she's Illyrian, and so they have to get through that. So they're really concerned because she's developing, or she had developed an infection there, and that would have been, pretty dire for her in that situation. So, um, it was neat seeing Una's flashback, and to be, uh, my maybe I wasn't paying attention close enough. So when I saw her parents, to be honest, I was like, okay, are those her biological parents, or is she an adopted, like, child? And I was actually a little bit confused. So forgive me. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention to the episode, but I had a little bit of confusion on the background and the Illyrian
Well,
background.
yeah, she doesn't make any hints that she was. I'm very confident that those were her biological parents,
Gotcha.
because she talks about stuff later on in the trial, right? And about how her and her family and everything like that. So she never mentioned anything about being adopted, as far as we know, or whatever. So I'm very confident saying those are probably her biological parents, which
Gotcha.
means they're Illyrian too.
Gotcha. Gotcha. It does kind of set the stage where there's a lot of fear in there, right? Her family so sets the stage that, hey, they're pretty afraid if they get found out that they are Illyrian, that they're in big trouble. So that that's probably probably a very important part of the flashback there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But we do get to, after that flashback, we do get to shift, and we see Captain Battelle again. So she's back, and we see Una. So this was kind of an interesting scene, right? We've got Captain Battelle, and we've got Una with her counsel, and they're discussing a plea deal, and the plea deal's pretty bad. I mean, it just sounds, it's pretty bad. I mean, the deal that Starfleet was offering Una was essentially, hey, we're gonna let her go, but they're gonna seal her records. She's not gonna have to serve any time, but she gets dishonorably discharged. Which, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. The very end of season one, I still wasn't sure. And then when we get into season two,
Mhm.
now we're learning that Pike's what we say, friend with benefits,
Mhm.
Captain Battelle,
Mhm.
who we know had a kind of a romantic fling going on there in season one, right? In fact, I think
Yes. Big.
the first episode, it's the two of them, and then she puts on her uniform, like, oh, okay, well, I guess she's a captain as well. The captains have a thing for each other. And at first you think, oh, well, is it his wife? And then no, it's not, because I don't think Pike ever was married. And so we learn now that she is, part of the legal system, right? She's part of the judge advocate general's office. So she's
Mhm.
a prosecutor or lawyer of some kind. So I found that interesting. But yeah, this plea deal, Chris, wasn't much of a deal, right? This was basically,
Yeah.
hey, you won't go to prison, but we're literally going to erase the existence of your service in order to, you know, what you may colloquially call CYA, right? Cover your
Mhm.
arse. In this case, Starfleet is covering themselves because they don't want anything to get out that they had a genetically modified person serving in Starfleet,
Yeah.
which I find fascinating because in the future in DS9, who else has to come to the aid of a certain Starfleet officer to cover his tracks? Although slightly different situation, but you think of Dr. Bashir, right?
Yeah.
And now the difference was Bashir's parents modified him genetically when he was younger. He had no say in it, right? Um, because he wasn't keeping up in school, and they want to make him smarter so he'd do better in school. And so his parents took the fall for him, but he was still able to stay in Starfleet and serve. Una, it's part of their culture, right? To do this genetic modifications and stuff. I doubt she had much of a choice, but it wasn't to make her smarter or it wasn't to give her an advantage. It was because of who they are as Illyrians, as part of who they are. So
Yeah.
similar but different with respects to what Bashir went through.
I was thinking about Bashir as well, throughout, particularly at the end of the episode,
Yeah.
when then to jump around a little bit, particularly at the end of the episode when we're thinking about, hey, is there the potential that they're going to change the Starfleet codes and laws? Um, and as you know, as that was happening, I was thinking, about Bashir and that, hey, Bashir got in a lot of trouble, and he that affected kind of his service in Starfleet, and certainly affected how people felt about him, in Starfleet, as his professional future.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty interesting. The the Illyrians, I don't know how you felt about it, but I know so little. It seems like I know so little about the Illyrians, but I feel like I should know more, but I don't.
Mm.
So that was interesting. And but yeah, they sure do a lot of genetic manipulation. I think, what is Una's? Is she stronger? Is that I'm trying to reflect back to season.
I believe it goes along the lines of it goes along the lines of being able to
Hmm.
heal herself, some of that. I will say we don't get much from the Illyrians. I believe they were actually first introduced in Star Trek Enterprise.
Oh,
So
okay.
uh there there was an episode of Enterprise called Damage, and that's where the Enterprise is damaged by a recent battle with by the recent Battle of Azadi Prime. It's assisted and repaired by an Illyrian ship that had been disabled by an anomaly field. And looking at Memory Alpha, it's talking about how Enterprise helped the Illyrians in turn, but they were unwilling, however, to trade their warp coil because not having it would mean a 3-year journey home, needing the warp coil in order to save Earth from the Xindi, blah blah blah. And so that's really all we get. We don't get anything else.
Okay.
So really, you're not missing much here, Chris, because the Illyrians, there's not much known prior to Strange New Worlds.
Okay. Okay, that's good because we have Pike travel. So Pike is traveling to the planet with the Illyrians on, and so looking for a lawyer for Luna, and that's where we see it. And so it's interesting because he goes to the planet, and the planet's not exactly habitable for human life. So he's got to wear his mask, but
Yeah.
The Illyrians don't. Um, but he gets to talk to the lawyer eventually, Nira, to get her help, and they get oxygen into the room. So that was, I get confused a little bit. Again, I know we don't know a lot about the Illyrians, but I get confused on their background because they obviously have like some sort of relationship or history with humans, and that they're aware of like the biological needs that humans have. So that's interesting, and there's obviously a good amount of knowledge that Starfleet has about the Illyrians. So
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting too.
Well, and if you think about it too, there's about 100 years between when Enterprise meets them and when we are in Strange New Worlds ish, right? So
Mhm.
there's enough time, I think you could make that argument that okay, the Federation learned enough about them and everything.
Yeah, I did. I did like the scene where Pike is Pike is trying to get to see the lawyer. Like,
Yeah.
so he's told, hey, she's busy. She's busy. He's like, no, I'll wait. I'm fine. I'll wait. And his oxygen is running out. So I'm waiting.
Yeah. That was pretty funny. He's like, I'll wait. He's like, yeah, he's like, he's being stubborn, right? I mean, he's not taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
And it's very evident as this episode goes on that stubbornness pays off, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But that was a good
But
scene. Yeah, good scene with Nira.
yeah, and Pike's urging her to help, and we don't know this at the time, but Nira clearly has some sort of past history with Una, and so Nira is not on board with the idea of helping at all.
Mhm.
But Pike says, "Hey, I need you. You're one of the best in the galaxy, and on top of that, then maybe you can bring awareness. I think he mentioned it specifically. You could bring awareness to some of the other cases against the Federation that you have worked on in order to gain an ally, at some point with Starfleet. So there's certainly some sort of, you know, he's trying to appeal to her personally, right? I think
Yeah.
that's kind of where uh, what makes the most sense. Um, but yeah, so it's very clear though that Nira's past with Una wasn't necessarily a good one, right?
Yeah.
Nira shows up at Una's cell and she's like, "Look, I don't want to hear all this long drudging story from you. Just give it to me straight. Tell me the short version." And so Una kind of goes on and explains things, and Nira can't understand why she don't take the deal.
Yeah.
Why she won't take the deal and avoid prison. And I think Una's at the point now where she's like, you know what, I'm tired of hiding.
Yeah.
I'm tired of hiding who I am. I'm tired of hiding being an Illyrian. And you know, uh, we know that the personal issues aren't resolved yet, but thankfully, for especially for Una's sake, that Nira does indeed take the case um, to help Una, knowing that hey, taking this case could give her a platform, right, to bring awareness to the fact that the Illyrians are not welcome,
Yeah.
the way they should be within the Federation.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was good to see them back in the same room, like near. Well, actually, it was the first time we had seen them in the same room,
Yeah.
near and Una. But it was good to see that kind of introduction of the two and the uncomfortableness that obviously was there between them since they had a lot of past history. So I thought that both the actresses played that well. So that was
Yeah.
both good. I really like the scene that comes afterward. I want to see how you like it as well. But this is where, because essentially Una accepts Nira as her counsel, so Una rejects that plea deal, and that certainly does not make Captain Patel very happy about that because Captain Patel worked hard to get that plea deal. So
Yeah, she stuck her neck out there, and I think the only reason she did is because of her relationship, and whatever that relationship is with Captain Pike, and it's Captain Pike's first officer, and I think she has an idea and knows how important Una is to him.
yes, so she is not happy, and she goes to Pike, and so Pike is cutting up his food. He's preparing his meal, and so they have some words. But I want to see how you feel because I really like Pike's reaction. It's not. I thought Pike just went straight to the heart of the matter, and this was such something that Captain Pike would say, and this just kind of encapsulates his character. But I want to see how you really feel about it. I really liked it. So how did you like it?
Yeah, I definitely did. This scene was great. Um, and they're talking about I think Captain Patel says something about she broke the law or whatever, right? Um she's not adhering to the law, and that Captain Patel basically says, "Look, I get it, you're angry, whatever." She says, she's like, but I did my absolute best and did everything I could to try to get her the absolute minimum punishment, which in this case, in this plea deal, is no jail time, but that means that your services, everything you've done in your career, as far as on paper, means nothing. It's gone. It didn't happen. It doesn't exist. Right? They're going to seal her records,
Yeah,
and so that's they're cleaning the slate. And the line, and I don't remember exactly how he phrases it, Chris. So correct me if I'm wrong here,
yeah,
but this is probably my favorite line of the episode. This is where Pike says, "But but what if the law is wrong?"
you
Or
got
or
it.
or or
Yeah,
or or, or does he say the he either says the law is wrong or what if the law? I thought he questioned it like, what if the law is wrong?
I think you got it.
Is that what he's something like that?
Yeah, I think you got it.
And he just doesn't understand why Una was even arrested in the first place, which, you know, he knew that her revealing herself as an Illyrian made things illegal for her. You know what I mean? Like he knew. I think he knew. Um, well, we know he knew. Does that make yeah?
Yeah,
I don't know. Anyways, we're authentic here, people.
we
That's
are.
one thing we'll say. But yeah, what were your thoughts about his line? What did you think when he shot that out? Like you said, he went straight for the jugular, right? Instead of saying, "Yeah, Una was wrong," but we need to get her out of this. It was, what if the law's wrong? What are your
I,
thoughts?
I that hit me. So it was a good moment. I think it was very dramatic in that particular scene, um, and that really affected me. What if the law is wrong? Because that hit the core of the episode, and not that a lot of the monologues later on in the episodes were not beautiful, because they were. I think they were, very, very articulate and very well spoken and great. But Pike just, that was the distilled version, and at that point, it causes us to think, what if the law is wrong? And because laws
Yeah.
are created by um, individuals and created by people, and the imperfectness of people, we're going to have laws that are wrong. And so this was such a great, that's what's, like you say, Zach, this what Star Trek does, like, a lot through all of their episodes. Like, this was such a great and a classic way for Star Trek to question that. And so this is the episode where Strange New Worlds gets to explore that and have its own trial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the pinnacle of Star Trek, right? I mean, Star Trek, when they talk about, boldly going, right, and seeking out new life and new civilizations and all this stuff. Boldly going doesn't necessarily mean that we have to visit a new planet every week. It doesn't mean we have to have new aliens and go on these big battles and adventures all the time. Sometimes boldly going means going to places and talking about things that are uncomfortable and difficult to talk about,
That's
right?
beautiful. That's beautiful.
I mean, that's how I look. That's how I look at it as an adult. Back when I was a kid, it's like, yeah, we're going to see aliens and ships and space battles and stuff like that. But looking at it now from a perspective at almost, I won't say my age, but I'm, older.
Yeah.
It's this idea that boldly going means we do go to these certain places. We not just different places in the galaxy, but different places in challenging things and talking about things and discussing things that are difficult. Star Trek's always talked about difficult topics. And unfortunately, I must say this, unfortunately, people don't necessarily want to have these difficult conversations anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people don't like to have discussions with somebody who views things differently than they do. And so I think that's unfortunate, because when you have good discussion and when you have civil and adult conversations and civil debates, that's what spurns new ideas. That's how we improve. That's how we move forward. So, just my 2 cents.
No, Zach, that is beautiful. Is it okay? Can we continue? I want to continue this conversation because
Yeah,
on so so
absolutely.
so I'm sorry. We might get
No, this
sidebar a
this
little bit.
this
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
kind of this is kind of the central theme of this
yeah,
episode, right?
yeah. So there's a few things. There's a beautiful quote by Bruce Lee, and it's short, but I loved it. And he says, all knowledge is ultimately self knowledge. And so all
Mm.
knowledge that you gain, right, through exploration of the stars, ad Astra, through the stars, through difficulty, all knowledge that we gain through that is ultimately a reflection of ourselves and knowledge, and a deeper understanding that we get. And I had just watched Ad Astra with Brad Pitt, and
Oh,
I really
yeah.
loved that movie because it was a deeply personal movie, and it's not for everybody, but he was learning to understand himself, as in his search for his father on the other side of the solar system. But the episode with Q and the trial of humanity, and that end trial in all good things.
Yeah, which we didn't list in that episode in that
Right.
list, but we probably should have, right? Because there's part of a trial again.
Right. But
Yeah.
that the end, when Q is leaning forward to Picard and whispering to him, he says the greatest exploration is something to the fact the greatest exploration is not out there, it's within. And I love that. So what you said, Zach, is just beautiful. And um, this it reminded me of all of those things and those kinds of beautiful quotes and the beautiful parts of Star Trek that I like, because it's just an analogy for gaining deeper self-knowledge.
Yeah, and a little bit of a lighthearted moment here when I'm thinking of, he said, "Is the law wrong?" I'm waiting for Sylvester Stallone to bust through the door and go, "I am the
Yes.
law," and the
Yeah.
law's never wrong. I don't know, a little Judge Dredd action there is what I was waiting for.
We need some of
Uh,
that. Yeah.
yeah, that'd be epic. Because I was thinking about that law right in the scenes, and some people don't like that movie. I love the movie.
Hmm.
I love it for what it is, right?
Yeah.
Just like 66 Batman, his other things, I love them for what they are. And so, yeah, I thought that I was waiting for Judge Dredd to bust through and go, "I am the law. It's never run." And then Pike look over and go, "Actually, I think it is." But anyways, yeah, no,
Yeah.
it that line, that question that he asks, I think beautifully encapsulates the central theme of this episode as a whole. And we can get kind of come back around to this too at the end. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's I think there's something mentioned towards the end, right, in the courtroom scene, where somebody says that laws are typically created with good intentions or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it's Nira or if it's one of the judges up there or whatever. But we can come back to that later. But
Yeah. Yeah.
moving forward, Chris, we look at this. So Nira kind of talks to Una and says, you're not exactly making things easy for Starfleet here, right? Because by not taking their plea deal, now they have to take you into trial, right? And by taking you to trial, it's not gonna be as easier as it had been had you taken the plea deal. Now they're gonna want to hang you up by your britches and make an example of you.
Yeah.
And so I found this interesting, Chris, because I think you see this in a lot of movies and shows that deal with the court and with trials and stuff, whether it's things like Law and Order or movies like A Few Good Men, things like that, where Una wants to take the stand herself
Yeah.
and kind of, be able to speak for herself, let her record speak for itself, because she's got a really good record, by the way. She's got an impeccable Starfleet record. But her counsel, Nira, uh, doesn't exactly think that's a good idea. And so Nira's like, no, 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 no. Sorry. Like, if I'm doing this, if I'm gonna help you, we're doing this my way.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's when we get the transition from the two of them together discussing in that room to Nira then beaming up to the Enterprise to gather evidence.
Yeah. 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 That's right. Um, and it's interesting, like in that kind of in the process of Nira trying to gather evidence, we get some of Leon too. In
Oh,
Leon's
yes, we do.
right. Yeah.
Yep.
we got we get
Yes, we do.
we do Leon's kind of so these were really good scenes with Leon, right? Because Leon is um concerned about how did Starfleet learn that Una was Illyrian. And so, we find out later in the episode that Leon's concerned that, perhaps it was one of her personal logs that was leaked out where Starfleet found out about that. But in Leon's kind of attempt to find this out, we get some really great scenes and perspective of Leon, because Leon cares very, very deeply for Una. Leon would not be alive without Una. And
Yeah, and Una's a mentor, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Una's a mentor. And I did really like the scene where Leon is asking Uhura uh, to do some investigation and some scans of the ship's communications, including personal logs, and that back and forth where, and this you have to have a lot of respect for Uhura. The back and forth between Uhura and Leon, where Uhura is essentially saying, "Hey, no, you can't do this. You're going to get in trouble. You need to find a different way. I can't do this for you." And it's not that Uhura didn't understand. She understood what Leon was trying to do, but she kind of saved Leon. Actually,
Yeah,
Uhura did.
100%.
Yeah. Yes.
100%. Yeah. That was a bold move. Bold move by Uhura. And in fact, I'm pretty sure Leon actually calls her by her first name as almost to
Oh yeah.
appeal to her, the personal side of it, and
Yeah.
say, help me out, Nyota, or whatever the line was. And she's like, I can't do it because then I would be violating, a law or whatever in order to help you violate it. And I can't do that. So you see some significant um, integrity for a young ensign who was just a cadet not that long ago, right? And telling this superior officer like, no, this is an unlawful order. I can't follow it. And Leon and so I think in the end, Leon very much respects her for that.
Yeah, you're right.
Um,
You hit that. That was a great word, integrity for Uhura. You hit that right on. So that's absolutely great.
yeah, and actually, it's interesting too because Leon showed up to Una's quarters where Nira had gone to use her room as a work area and said that she thinks somebody may have illegally accessed some evidence that's being used against Una. And so she thinks she has a way of getting that, which is then what leads her to Uhura to try to get these personal logs, trying to figure out that did somebody get a hold of the personal logs and then send them to Starfleet? Like, how did this happen and everything? And so that's then where we cut to Captain Battelle on the starbase with Pike and asking him if he's upset about not being added to the witness list. And I think that obviously it was the right call because had they brought Captain Pike in, what Captain Battelle basically says is if, hey, look, if you're put on that stand and you're questioned about when you found out that Una was an Illyrian and you hid that and you knew about it and you hid it and you covered it up, now it becomes a trial about you, which leads to a court martialing you. And then this is domino effect, potentially also impacting your crew. And so now you have Captain Battelle, who's literally on the opposite side, right? Who's looking out not only for Pike and his crew, but also she's trying to make everything work, right? She's trying to make this thing work to get the best outcome. I mean, I will say hats off from me to Captain Battelle for trying to do what she felt was the right thing while also trying to enforce the rule, the rule of the land, right? The rule of the law and do her job. So I would say maybe she shouldn't have said some of the things she said to Pike and other people, but I think in general, she's trying to find that balancing piece between the personal relationship sides of things and doing her job. So I don't know how you felt, Chris, but I would tip my cap to her because I think she's trying to do what's right by the law and what's right by her friendships.
I super liked Captain Patel. Um, so, and it was this was a really smart move to have Pike on the sidelines essentially
Yeah.
because he's kind of an observer on this whole thing. He can't really do much. So, but a really smart move to have him there on the sidelines because it's kind of minimizing his presence in the episode and in the trial, and giving, like we said earlier, a chance for the other main characters to be fleshed out more and to participate more in the episode and to give
Yeah.
more thoughts and character. Made Captain Battelle, the part that you have to really feel for the awkwardness of her situation. She's
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. She's actually in a terrible situation. She has this relationship, a very positive one with Pike. She understands all of the positive things that Una has done as a Starfleet officer, but yet in her job, in Captain Patel's job, now she must do something about Una. and it's not a pleasant thing at all, but she has to do it, and which she does. But I really liked her because if you notice, like near the end of the episode, as Nira is giving her defense arguments and Nira's articulating the defense of Una, you see the expression on Captain Patel's face as she hears what Nira is saying. And she's internally, she's beaming and she's smiling because she's going, yeah, Nira's right. And
Yeah, she starts smirking too, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, like she's like, wow, it's like this she's hitting it right on the head. She knows she's right.
yeah,
That's a good point.
yeah. So I really liked that about Captain Patel, actually, because I feel that um, up until that moment, right, Captain Patel is likely like an exemplary officer and a captain, and she has been doing a great job in her duties with Starfleet, and is great on in enforcing the law, the current Starfleet law. Um, but this episode was helpful in understanding Pike's perspective at the end in what if the law is wrong? Because there is right according to the law, and there is right regardless of what the law says. So I think that
Yeah,
you know probably helped Captain Patel. I
that's a good
really,
point.
yeah, I like her.
Yeah, that's good. I do too. And I thought that was interesting that Pike reveals that he gave a speech at Una's graduating class at the academy, and meeting her when she came up to discuss some mistake he'd made. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that was a cool little tie back, right? Because you up to this point, I don't think we really know how they met initially, right? I don't
yeah.
think that was ever mentioned in season one, was it?
I don't, I don't think so. Yeah,
Yeah, and of course it wasn't mentioned in the cage, so that I'm aware of. Maybe I'm not remembering. That's been a long time since I watched the cage. We should probably go back and watch that again
we
just to
should.
refresh our memory. Because it does have ties to the show. But okay, so we shift to the next scene, Chris. And I thought this next scene was a great little comedic relief from some of the heaviness of the episode, where Dr. Mbenga and Lieutenant Ortegas are eating on, I think, on the station,
Yes.
and they're very very closely watching uh the body language between Spock and the Vulcan admiral. I think it's Pasalic or something like Pasalic, Vice Admiral Pasalic,
Yeah, I think
the
so.
the Vulcan admiral. I thought this was a really funny scene.
They're just sitting across the table staring at each other, and a
Well, there's a little bit of talk going
little
on,
bit of
but
dialogue there.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. And Mbega says something like, "Yeah, this is. Can you feel the tension between them?" you know, Taker's like, "What's going on?" Like
She's like, what are you talking about? Like
yeah,
they're pals, they're buddy, right?
yeah. And afterwards, Spock comes to them and he says, he's essentially apologizing. I'm sorry that you guys had to witness my outburst.
What I loved was
Yeah.
how he's like, he's the one acquaintance or friend of my father who makes brings out the worst in me or
Brings out the
something
worst in me.
like that, and you're like, wait a second, how did you get that? But clearly Dr. Mbenga's a little bit more in tune with Vulcan body language than Lieutenant
Yes.
Ortega's is. But I thought that was a really really funny scene, really
Yes.
funny, and definitely well placed in the episode.
Yeah. It was, yes, you're right. It was well placed because there's some release of tension there.
Yeah,
Yeah. As we got ready for the actual trial. So,
right.
which was important. And the trial, was an observation, but I really loved the set design for the trial.
Yeah,
The way
reminded
they
you of a
had,
court. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. They had
there's some
these,
similarities there.
yeah, the background. They had these. I don't think they were paintings. I'll have to see it again, but they had this great background, um, beautiful set design, and I think you commented on the dress uniforms too, right? Beautiful dress uniforms.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that that was great. But we get the beginning of the trial, then we get a little bit more background on the laws against genetic modification and genetic manipulation, and that they're in place to protect people. And we've got Captain Patel to kind of deliver that and give some summary on that. Um,
Did you notice real quick, Chris? Did you notice uh, who one of the admirals up in the front there, like I guess they're judges or whatever, who one of those admirals was?
okay, one of them looked really familiar.
Well, not the actor. So one of the judges, admirals up in the front, was a Tellarite.
Yes.
The weird looking pig face looking thing, and that was a Tellarite. We don't see a lot of Tellarites, right? We got a lot of Tellarites in Enterprise, right?
Yeah.
And in TOS, we got the Tellarites for the first time, obviously. But the Tellarites are one of the founding members of the Federation.
Yes.
So I think that was great as like it's not, I wouldn't say an Easter egg, but I think it was great to see them incorporating. I mean, again, we don't see them very often. We don't see Andorians or Tellarites all that often in Star Trek. I mean, Enterprise had the most of it, but and then TOS, but I mean, the other series we don't see a whole lot of them,
Mhm.
especially Tellarites. So I thought it was great that they brought in a founding member of the Federation, a founding species of the Federation in, and it's an admiral on this particular trial. It would have been nice to have, for the Tellarite to have had some lines, but I thought that was kind of neat that they had that.
Agree with you. Yeah, that was awesome that they had a Tellarite. Maybe we'll get some more Tellarite major characters in the future.
That would be interesting. I would like to see some Andorians too, right? I mean, again,
Yeah.
these are two species, as we know from Enterprise, that hated each other. They were at war with each other. It seemed like all the time. They didn't trust each other, and so you know, it'd be cool to keep bringing that back in. And with the time period that Strange New Worlds is in, I think it could be very easy to bring those folks in.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think
Sorry, I
you're
know that was a little bit of
right.
a sidebar, but I was thinking about that as you're describing the court scene,
Yeah.
right? And the layout, I was thinking, yeah, we had a Tellarite admiral, which I think was awesome. I don't think we've ever seen a Tellarite admiral, and I'm trying to think how many Tellarites we've even seen in Starfleet uniforms. I don't know that I
Not
can even think of
many.
one. I
Yeah.
don't even know if I can think of one. There may have been one in the background on some episode, some random place somewhere that someone's like, "Oh, you forgot about this." You're right, I did. But it was cool to see that, right? Especially in a high position, like in an admiral position.
Yeah. Bring in some
Anyways,
more
just
Tellarites.
my 2 cents in there. Yeah.
That's good. Did you notice the memory cartridge when they started the trial? It was like one of those memory discs that was similar to TOS.
Yeah.
So
That was a nice touch.
yeah, it was a nice touch.
I mean, they have to, right? Because that's how TOS was. So you have to bring that stuff in. I mean, yes, we already know some of the touchscreen display stuff and everything else. It's much more advanced looking than TOS was, of course, because they're different eras. We know. Yeah. That's just part of, you know, making TV shows and movies in different eras, I guess. But
Yep.
yeah.
But
So
nice touch. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
so we get that court scene, right? Very beautiful, nice looking area. The Judge Advocate General symbol on the back wall, right? The Starfleet Command and everything. And I I really liked this touch, Chris, where Captain Patel brings up a certain event, certain significant event or events that happened in Earth's past, which led to them creating these laws against genetic manipulation or genetic modification.
Yeah, you're talking about the eugenics wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that there's so much more that we could learn from the eugenics wars. I don't. Did you say that? Are they in a series of books? Maybe. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
There are
Okay.
some books around the eugenics wars.
Okay.
I have not read them. I've heard they're good. I have not read them though. Should be on my list of things to read out in the future for sure.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think we're in that era before they find Khan on the Botany Bay, right? Because
Yeah.
Kirk hasn't found him yet. He's not the captain of the Enterprise yet. So there's a lot we could learn, whether it's the past, Leon's past, and we get to see a little bit of this, a little bit more of this in this episode, and learn a little bit more about it. Um, but I think you're right. I think there's a lot we could learn, and I hope they continue to integrate this stuff into the show.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking the same thing. Exactly what you just said. Integrate more of it into the show because I think we are. Uh, I mean, it's in terms of how we are now in our actual society and our technology. we're bioengineering and exploring all of the bioengineering possibilities and DNA manipulation and DNA modifications. Those things and those ideas are being um, explored and kind of advanced as far as we can right now in science. So having some of these topics kind of explored in Star Trek and in science fiction, I think very timely. It'd be very, very good things to do. And eugenics wars could be just a great platform to explore all kinds of things associated with it.
And there's a movie that deals with this. It was made many years ago now with Arnold Schwarzenegger called The Sixth Day.
Yeah.
And I believe it deals with genetic modification and cloning in particular. Like there's a scene in the movie where they're called repet, where if your pet dies, you just go down and they clone it and make you a new one, like as if it never died and all this stuff. And so it deals with that too. And I think that movies like that and stuff like the eugenics wars are definitely closer. We're closer to that than I think we care to admit.
I agree. I think there's another movie that came out in the 90s, Gattaca, and
Yep.
I think Gattaca talks about that, right? I think that's a major
Yeah.
part of Gattaca, and
Yep.
I think they're seeking perfection. Yeah, something. This is a while ago. I'm thinking maybe we watch it. This is perfect. We could discuss this as a future episode, but perfection in humanity, and if there's an imperfection within you, then that's a problem.
Yeah, it's this idea that we've seen throughout science fiction for since science fiction has been around, basically, and it's the idea of playing God, right? The idea
Mhm.
of monkeying with things that we probably shouldn't be monkeying with, because there's always negative consequences. I think you see this in every one of these sci-fi movies that the negatives grossly outweigh the positives when it comes to doing
Mhm.
this kind of stuff. And the eugenics wars is a prime example of that in Star Trek,
Mhm.
right? Where they made these super soldiers. They rose up and tried to take over the Earth before they were defeated. And
Mhm.
then they're shipped off on the sleeper ship in the Botany Bay as their punishment. Um, and so I find that, and I also find it interesting that they didn't, kill them. They didn't just straight up, kill them. I guess maybe they would have thought it was genocide or something, but um, regardless, this episode is opening up kind of a can of worms
Yeah.
when it comes to this topic, right? And because this is not the first time Star Trek is addressing this, but it's addressing it maybe in a little bit more of a unique way, right? It's instead of just saying, "Oh, it's illegal, you can't do that," like they did with Bashir.
Mhm.
It's addressing the fundamentals, the foundations of the Federation, which is one of its laws, one of its codes, right? Which is this idea of genetic manipulation.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
definitely think it's not breaking any new ground with a topic, but it's certainly, I think, maybe breaking ground in the way in which it addresses the topic a little bit.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting, what happens in our real lives, what may happen and may be becoming the next 10 years with our own medical advancements. And then how we look back on this particular episode.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I
Yeah.
have more gray hair. Oh my gosh. I was just I haven't been to work in a while. Took some time off, and so I have some facial hair here, and one side of my face over here, the whole patch is just all white. I'm like, oh gosh, there's something wrong with that.
No, man, we're getting younger, like I say.
Yeah, I I'm still waiting for that, Chris. But anyways, so yeah, this actress, I can't remember how to pronounce her name, who plays Nira, was absolutely amazing. I thought she did a fantastic job. When she's in that courtroom and she's doing this trial, and she really commands the room. I think she really takes charge, and she has a certain presence to her, which I thought was great. Very well cast for this particular role. Um, but I also found it interesting, Chris. So when Captain Patel brings Admiral Robert April, in and starts questioning him, you notice that he kind of totes the company line here a little bit, right? He says, "Look, yes, I sponsored her application to the academy, and he's very openly honest about how great of an officer he thinks she is, and yada yada yada." And so then Captain Patel has to kind of pull out the big guns here, and she's like, "Yeah, but the question is, had you known about her being an Illyrian and having these genetic modifications, would you have sponsored her?" And he pauses there for a little bit, and then I think she asks him again, maybe, and then eventually says, "Yeah, no, I guess I wouldn't have, or not. I guess he said, no, I wouldn't have sponsored her." So that's a big kick to the face a little bit, right? For the I think for the hopes at this point in the trial
Yeah.
that you have a very well decorated, very well respected admiral who's saying, "Hey, I sponsored the academy, but if I had known, I wouldn't have." That's a big blow if you're the defense counsel in this case.
Yeah, and you see that expression. I think we get to see the expression on Una's face.
Yeah,
Um, and so that was kind of heartbreaking for her to hear that, right?
yeah.
Maybe another interesting question that Nira could have asked Admiral April was, do you do you regret sponsoring her?
No, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you
That's
know,
true.
I don't know if they're allowed to ask questions like that. But
Yeah,
yeah, it'd be interesting because Una, certainly with Una being admitted into Starfleet, Una saved a lot of lives, right? So that's absolutely a way that you could look at it too.
yeah. That's
But
true.
you're right. Like, I mean, how else is he going to answer some of those questions?
Well, he's under
Yeah,
oath, right?
yeah,
Because if
right,
if he says I still would have sponsored her knowing she was that way, well, now it
yeah,
looks like okay, he would have broken the law too. So
right.
in a sense, the question that's asked by Captain Patel to Admiral April is a no-win situation, right? It's the Kobayashi Maru type
Mm-hmm.
of question in this situation. He's backed into a corner and he has to answer, you know, exactly a certain way, because if he doesn't, then now things are going to look bad on him, and now maybe they're going to start questioning him, and it's a domino effect. Really, there's it's a horrible question for him because he doesn't have a choice in how he answers if he wants to maintain a semblance of a career, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
I
You're
did
right.
though like Chris. I did like how Nira cross examines him though.
Yeah, because Nira brings in this whole other important argument, right? So she's saying, okay, you're in Starfleet, you're a captain, you're an admiral, you're following all these rules, and then she brings up the one of the most important rule of all that Starfleet has, General Order Number One. And I like how she goes, what's the other name for General Order Number One? She might say it. She's otherwise known as the Prime Directive.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then goes to cite several examples where he disobeyed the Prime Directive. Right.
yeah.
So we
I love the point she's making too, right? She's like, okay, so you can break the literally the number one rule,
yeah
but when it comes to this is a no go, and they're all like, well, this guy. I think it was was it Captain Patel, or was it one of the judges that is like, hey, he's not on trial,
yeah he's not on trial.
and she's trying to make a point. I think you're right. She's trying to bring across the idea of if these people can do this, why is this become the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? Why is this such a big injustice compared to what General Order Number One and how many times it's been broken?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she's saying, "Hey, Starfleet, you've got these high ideals, Starfleet, but you're not acting to them, and are you being disingenuous with it?" So calling out Starfleet right there. And
Yeah.
yeah, definitely the judges didn't like that.
No, no. That didn't go down very well.
Yeah, yeah. So that was good. We do get several witnesses for Una, which was great. We get to see
Yep.
um I think we've got Spock as a witness, we've got Leon as a witness, and a very touching one with Leon as a witness, right? Because Una saved Leon, and
Yeah.
that and River is contributing. River is also contributing my golden retriever to the discussion too. But yeah, very good montage, and then another like a nice comic relief with Spock on the stand too, and when he's asked, "Did you ever sense that Una was hiding something from you?" And Spock said, "Yes, I sensed that she was hiding something from me." From me. She said, "Oh, really?" And her
Yeah,
her love of
the tension gets really thick there, right?
yeah love of like certain musicals. So that was good.
Yeah, he said that she had been hiding it, that she had an affinity for Gilbert and Sullivan musicals, right?
Ah, yes,
That
yes,
was really funny.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and even Dr. Mbenga, I thought added some lightheart, some additional, care there as he's speaking on the stand. Um, Leon, however, was able to successfully lie. Right? She lied about knowing that Una was Illyrian. I'm pretty sure, right, from season one, that she knew, she found out that she was Illyrian, right? It was during that battle with the Gorn, I think, right? And she found out how she was able to heal, and that I think she told her that she was Illyrian, or she had that ability or something.
Oh, I get that's a great point. I got to go back and watch that part too regarding Leon. There's some other things with with Leon that you may be able to help explain, um, but I'm not sure. It was did someone was asking Leon like, "Hey, your last name is like really, really familiar. Are you related to Khan?" And Leon's like, "Yes, I'm related to Khan." Uh, and I'm trying to remember who Leon was talking to, but it was something like, "Hey,
I think it was Captain Patel
Captain
who was
Patel."
cross-examining them. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, oh, it was her conversation with Nira, where Nira says, "Are you do you feel like you're carrying some of the augments within you because of your relationship?" I'm not sure if that was the exact word, but carrying some of the traits. Maybe it was that, carrying some of the traits with you. So, in that conversation, it got me confused a little bit about Leon because now my understanding is Leon is not an augment at all. Um,
No, as far as we know, she's not.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, if there's something, because she's a descendant, if there's something about her that would be in some way augmented, that would then affect her ability to be in Starfleet. But
Right.
then with the trial of Una, maybe that would change things. But as far as we know, there has not been any word that she is genetically modified. Although you kind of make an assumption that maybe she in some way is, just from the sheer fact she's a descendant of Khan.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see how that develops. I like Leon's. This is what I noticed in this episode with Leon. She has this great kind of a side look. So she'll be looking to. She won't look like directly at some. She'll just kind of give this side glance, and um, it's just this. It's a great look to see, and it portrays like her inner thinking, and it also portrays like some skepticism on her part about the circumstance. So I like that.
Yeah, Christina Chong has got uh quite the look,
Yeah,
right? Like she's got some piercing eyes that can just stare right through you. Yeah,
yeah,
you're absolutely right on that one.
yeah. That is good. That is good. So we do have Una eventually. Una takes the stand, and so
Yeah.
I think that is some of the great parts of this episode where we've got the back and forth about Una, and we learn that um, we learn more about the past between Nira and Una, and that Una, kind of decided they started to live in different cities, the non-Illyrians and the Illyrians, which was interesting. And then Una and her family could fit in with the non-Illyrians, so they moved and they never saw each other again. So I thought, well,
Yeah.
that was interesting. They kind of
You
do
know,
that.
now that I'm thinking about it, Chris,
Yeah.
if Leon is a descendant of Khan, she has to be carrying something. She's got to be carrying some form of genetic modification markers in her genes.
Hmm.
I mean, it would not make any sense if she wasn't.
Yeah.
So in that regard, her and Una are, they definitely share that in common, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's the case. Sorry, that just kind of popped in my head. I'm thinking about that. I'm like, if she's a descendant of Khan, she should have something. She should be carrying something.
Yeah. So how did she make it through and get admitted to Starfleet?
Good question.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find that out.
Maybe we will.
Maybe there'll be
Because
another trial. No, I hope they don't do that. One trial's enough. We don't need another one, but
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. One trial. Yeah. One trial's enough.
yeah.
Per one trial per season or a couple seasons.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so we get we get Una on the stand, like you said, and this is where everything starts coming together, I think, right? With the
Yeah.
defense. Um, Una talks about how her life was, right? You mentioned that her and her family picked up and left, and that then they eventually divided the city into like non-Illyrians and Illyrians. And her and her family chose to go to the other side and live with all of the non-Illyrians
Yeah.
to blend in, which I found that very fascinating. And that they worked very hard to blend in, not to be noticed. I kind of thought about that, and I'm like, I think they had to have done that because they just wanted to be treated like everybody else, right? They didn't want to be, because she mentioned, right, about how I think that they moved once they started getting like a lot of like for so many words, not death threats, but they started getting picked on and
Yeah.
calling, like I think she said something like Maudie or freak or something like that, whatever, right? People were making her feel like that. And now mind you, this kind of stuff I do not think would ever have been written about humans and life on Earth and things like that if Gene Roddenberry were still alive. Because remember, Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future, at least for humanity, was a utopia.
Hmm.
This is one of many things that have taken place in Star Trek since Gene Roddenberry died that has painted a picture that, the future might not be exactly a utopia that we think that, or that Gene Roddenberry's vision initially had it, right? I mean, DS9 was a prime example of that. Lots of examples in TNG as well. And Voyager, all of them, right? All the series since Gene Roddenberry passed away, I think. This is another one of those, right? Where you're seeing, okay, so there was a lot of unrest on, I think she was on Earth, wasn't she? They were in a
The
city,
that's a good. You like where that city was?
yeah, was it on Earth? I don't remember them saying. I guess I assumed it was on Earth.
I
Maybe it
that's a
wasn't.
that's a good point. I didn't assume it was on Earth. I thought it was on a different planet. So we both. That's a good. I think we're both unclear on that. We'll have to go back and see where it was.
Yeah.
Maybe a viewer will know and can help
Yeah, yeah.
educate.
If you know, let us
Yeah.
know if it was Earth somewhere else. But regardless, right? Like the idea of non-Illyrians and Illyrians and like having to segregate, right? You think about like the civil rights
Mm,
movement in the 1960s
yeah.
and all that, and this idea of segregation, and so Star Trek's talking about this again, right? They talked about it in TOS, and they talk about it now, and this idea of segregation. So the Illyrians are being segregated against, and they're having to move somewhere else. And her and her family have the courage to say, no, we're gonna go live amongst the non-Illyrians because we just want to be part of the group. And so I find that interesting. Um,
It is, and it's horrific at the same time. Like,
yeah.
what a horrible thing to have to decide to do, and then what a horrible thing in the to have the two separate cities.
Yeah, and I believe there's a mention somewhere where Una mentioned about a regret leaving and moving to the other part of the city because I think that's where her and Nira's friendship was. And then they moved and their friendship, So I think that kind of ties back to that. But uh very interesting story when Nira asks about why she wants to be in Starfleet. You know, this organization that is discriminating against her, and she talks about being younger, right? And some Starfleet people coming and her seeing the uniforms and being inspired by them. It's kind of a tale as old as time in that regard. And so she also tells a story about a boy whose genetic modifications were exposed when he was only 10, and his entire family was arrested.
Yeah.
And so we get into this idea of discrimination. We get this an idea of segregation. We also get this idea of separation, right? And you think about like even in like the 1940s when Japanese Americans were wrongfully put into internment camps, for lack of better words, right?
Yeah, they were.
Because of public distrust, or whatever excuse they used at the time. And so you kind of think about it like this, like they didn't trust these Illyrians. They had genetic modifications. This you think about the eugenics wars is in the 90s, right? As far as the time of Star Trek timeline. Now you're moving into what, 200 years later, and you still have this idea of fear from something that people maybe don't understand or fear because of a particular event. So you can see the eugenics wars are still having an effect hundreds of years later. That's how bad the eugenics wars was.
Yeah, they said what was it, 100 million people that
Yeah.
died in the eugenics war?
It was bad,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it was bad. And Khan and his people tried to rule the planet, and in doing so, killed a lot of people in the process. Made a lot of things bad. And this is pre-World War III as far as the timeline in Star Trek goes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that I liked what Una said with the visiting Starfleet officers was she said, "Hey, I saw Starfleet visit, and these people were all from different backgrounds and they were working together." And that, that inspired her. She said, "I want to be part of that, where I could be accepted in this group." And,
That's a good point. Yeah.
so, because that brings up Una's love of Starfleet. She's in love with this ideal, right? She says, which is the title of the episode, and which was Starfleet's motto at the time, which again I think is a beautiful motto, the ad astra per aspera, to the stars through difficulty. And Una's in love with that ideal, and inspired her to join Star Trek. Inspired her to join inspired her to join Starfleet, despite
Oh, that was
no,
perfect, Chris. That was perfect.
no.
I love it. We'll put that in the blooper reel.
We should. I've been like awake so long. I've been in so many meetings today. It's epic. Yeah. So, but I like that in terms of, so we know that Una is an idealist, and we learn that it has been so difficult for her to be in this organization that she loves, but she's been hiding this aspect about herself. Um, and then that goes round and round, with Nira, because Nira is trying to figure out who told Starfleet that she was Illyrian. So I didn't expect it. I did not expect it to come out where Una would say, "Hey, I turned
Yeah,
myself
she
in."
turned herself in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Did you? It caught me by surprise, but did you expect it?
Um. Yeah, I was a little surprised. There was a part of me that's like, well, what if she did it herself? But then you're like, well, why would she do that to herself? And I think it's this idea of her idea that she's just sick of not being who she is. She's Illyrian, right? And she doesn't want to have to continue to lie about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I found that fascinating. That she did that, and that she, but yet that, and I think Nira even brings this up, right? That she's like, then why do you still want to serve in Starfleet? I mean, this is toxic, right? This idea that you're going to work for an organization that doesn't want anything to do with you. Really, in this case, because of something she has no control over, which is the fact of this genetic modification as part of their culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so also I think Nira makes a good point as the trial begins to wind down, and then Nira goes into this really long, beautiful explanation where she pulls out the code. Actually, before we do that, what we really should do is not skip over the Vulcan admiral who says, "Oh, it's all kidding aside, like let's not get over our emotions." And then he pins her down, basically, metaphorically speaking, and says, "How long's your captain known?"
Yeah.
And just pretty much road grades the Captain Pike. And so she and he's like, you're under oath, which is always the go-to, right? Don't forget you're under oath. And so she says, yeah, on this star date, and that was like 4 months ago. And so now it comes into question about Pike, right? And his loyalties and his ethics and his ability to be a captain and make the right decisions and all that. So that was an important thing and at the time. But what did you think, Chris, of that final kind of speech as Nira brings up this idea about, well, okay, if Captain Pike had granted her asylum and she had requested asylum, then this is not a thing anymore, and kind of makes this idea that, well, if we're going to uphold the law, we got to uphold all the law. And there's this rule out there that allows this. She kind of finds like a way around it, right? In order to keep all this from being the case.
I thought it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's maybe a reason why Pike is Pike has said that she's best in the galaxy.
He does say that, doesn't he? Yeah. Thought it was pretty awesome. That she could, because it looked like she was doing that. I mean, it was obviously something she had thought about. Um and I know they're acting it out, but it looked like they, upon her realization with Una on the stand, and upon her realization of what Una was saying, that, hey, I feel like I was in fear, and I was persecuted, and I wanted to join Starfleet for its ideals, and then I turned myself in, essentially. That So Nira was able to find that particular law, or go right direct to the particular law, and then have Captain Battelle read it, right?
Yeah.
That was just great.
Yeah, it was a master's class in practicing law, I think, in this situation, right? I thought it was great. So obviously the trial's concluded by the judges saying, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we're gonna drop the charges against Una, based on this idea of asylum. And I thought that was good. I mean, you think about it, right? You kind of knew she was gonna get I'll say get away with it, but like that they weren't going to send her to prison, because the idea that you're going to have the first officer of the ship spend half a season or the rest of the season in some kind of Federation penal colony, or multiple episodes. I didn't see that happening. So you kind of knew going into it that because of these solo episodes, right, that she's probably not going to be convicted,
Right.
and or I should say sentenced anyways with anything. So she's able to stay in Starfleet because of the asylum seeking, and then she transports back to the Enterprise, and some smiles and clapping, and she's back, and what are you guys doing? You got stuff to do around here, whatever. And then that hug that Pike gives her was at first a little awkward, just because he was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna hug you, but it was very heartfelt. And I think it's because he really does care for her, not in a romantic way, but he cares for her as a member, like a member of family would.
Yeah, I liked the hug.
So yeah, I was curious what your thoughts were on that moment.
It was a nice touch. It felt it felt genuine, felt authentic. It felt like, yeah, that's something Pike would do. Pike is just very much, like I said, like we said before, he's the Boy Scout archetype that always tries to do the right thing, cares so much for his people.
Yeah,
absolutely would do that.
I don't know that he's a big hugger. Maybe that's why the hugging was a little awkward. Because I mean, does he come across as a hugger to you? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. I guess it depends on how you look at it. But I mean, I think he's got all those traits and qualities, but I don't necessarily think he's a hugger. So that could be why. But okay, so we look back at this episode as a whole, and where do you kind of place it as we look we put out some of those other trials episodes and court martial episodes, and
Ah,
where would you kind of place this in there? Would you place it if you were going through and ranking those episodes we talked about? Would you place it somewhere at the top,
hmm.
middle, bottom? Like where would you just it doesn't have to be anything specific, just kind of a general like how do you see this racking and stacking versus so many of the other moments that Star Trek has had similar to this episode?
That is a great question. I This is an initial response, so this might
Yeah.
change
Yeah. Gut
as I think
reaction right
about
away.
it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I would not put it at the top. Um, it would definitely, I'm not maybe it'll be somewhere around in the middle or near the top third. Um, because the ones I have in the top of my mind, those are the ones with Picard. Um, you know, certainly the ones of Measure of a Man with Picard, and certainly like the drumhead
Yeah.
one we were talking about, drumhead, which I think is very very similar to this one.
Yeah.
Um, but Picard's ability to speak to the ideals and principles of the law, I feel in Drumhead were just amazing, and I loved that. And he was able to turn that back on the Starfleet. That's my initial reaction right now. Would not be would not be at the bottom, nor the top. Maybe in that top third.
More in
And
the
this is
middle.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a great question. I'll keep thinking about it too. But that's my gut right now. What about you?
Yeah, I would probably say like if you're doing like it in thirds, like top third, middle third, bottom third, I'm
Yeah.
probably bottom of the middle third somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're right, there's some really good episodes in Star Trek in the past that have dealt with this. I mean, we can't, I would hate to forget the episode Court Martial, right from Toss that kind of kicks
Yeah.
all this off. And by the way, yeah, those dress uniforms with the ribbons or the medals that they have on there that are similar design pattern to Toss. I thought was a great touch. In harkening back to that, I some people I've read online didn't like them. I actually really liked the dress uniforms from this Strange New Worlds episode. I liked them quite a
Nice.
bit. I thought they were really classy. They looked good. They didn't look too outlandish or too way off in left field from what tosses look like. So I thought it was a good mix. The costume designer for Strange New Worlds has been amazing so far. I don't remember her
Yeah.
name, but been really really fantastic. So yeah, I'd say like bottom middle third because for me, like you said, the measure of a man, the drum head are definitely up there. For me, Tribunal's up there as well
Mm.
with O'Brien and seeing how the Cardassian court system or lack thereof works. But in general, I would say somewhere in that range.
Yeah. Nice. I think we're thinking pretty similarly. I mean, beautiful
Yeah.
set design. Um,
Yeah.
Uniforms beautiful, like you said and you mentioned and you pointed out. Yeah. But this was
Yeah.
for Strange New Worlds. This was probably this was the trial episode that they needed for the Strange New Worlds series. So
Yeah. And if you think about it, right, you look at, I was reading an article about this and I don't remember exactly where it was from. Otherwise, I would quote it. But they mentioned something about um, typically you see these types of episodes in a show that's matured a little bit more, like it's had more.
mhm.
Whereas like Strange New Worlds has only had this is like the 12th episode. So I thought that the fact that this was pretty good, and it was only the 12th episode in, says something, I think, about the series as a whole. When you saw some of the other stuff, you were many more episodes in. Like Measure of a Man, I think since season 2, but you back then they had 20 plus episodes a season.
Mhm.
So I found that an interesting take, right? This is a type of an episode you would see on a show that's had more time to mature as far as more episodes and so forth.
Yeah, agree. And I do like that the creators and the writers they are acknowledging that this type of episode is important to put in the
Yeah.
series and saying, hey, an episode that needs to be in there. This is important. So that is great. Um,
Yeah, it's doing what Star
yeah,
Trek does best, like
yeah,
we said, right? It's telling stories and it's challenging things, right?
yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
important to recognize and important to keep in mind when you watch Star Trek. Is that if you are watching it and you are really digging into what it's getting after, it's talking about uncomfortable things and uncomfortable topics that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Some people want to talk about all the time. Others somewhere in between, you know. And so I think but I think if we're going to be better as humans, I think we have to have these discussions and figure out how we get better and not just talk about it, but actually do it.
Yes.
So, this was a good one though. I thought.
What was it was any predictions for the next episode? I think it's going to be the next episode will be much different than this one, but any predictions?
Predictions. Yeah, I think we kind of talked about this before, right?
Yeah.
Like there probably some form of going somewhere and exploring something, because right, the first episode where we had Kajitar 4, but they didn't really explore necessarily.
Mm,
In this episode, they're not
yeah.
exploring anything. They're on Earth, right? They're at the Judge Advocate General's office. So I'm gonna guess it's going exploring something. I prefer if they explore more of Leon. That'd be nice. I'd be okay with that. Um, but besides that, yeah, going somewhere and exploring. What about you?
Yeah, I think it'll be an exploration one. Maybe some more action. And
Yeah,
I'm just yeah.
do we get the Gorn again in episode 3 of season 2? I don't know if they're gonna save that for later. I'm not sure.
Maybe they should save that for later.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm hoping at some point we're gonna get some more Hemmer, like in flashbacks or something, right? Like I want to
Yeah.
see Hemmer again, because I
Yeah.
think there was rumors by the showrunners that was gonna probably, most likely be a thing. So let's see it. Come on.
Yeah, you're right. And maybe we'll see more of the Lanthanite.
Yeah, Commander
Yeah.
Pelia.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that might
yeah.
happen.
Or maybe we'll actually get an episode where Pike's in more than 5 minutes of it. He is the captain after all. So
Yeah.
yeah, lots of possibilities here as we head towards season or episode 3 of season 2 coming next week at the time of this recording. But yeah, all right. Well, that's it for us, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching or listening to us on your favorite podcast platform. We do appreciate it. We thank you. We hope you enjoy these deep dives as we go episode by episode through Star Trek Strange New Worlds season 2. And we look forward to, I think it comes out in August, Chris, doing an episode by episode review of Ahsoka. There should be some
Yes.
great stuff in there, including the live action on screen debut of Grand Admiral Thrawn. We've been teased that. So look forward to that. I have been diving into myself, Chris. I've been diving
Ooh,
into
what's that?
Heir of the Empire, which is
Oh,
the
oh,
intro of Grand Admiral Thrawn. That is his origin book in the original expanded universe Star Wars before Disney got their grasp on it.
okay. I need to read that. Yeah, I want to
Yeah,
read that
it's
too.
the first in the trilogy Timothy Zahn wrote, that where Grand Admiral Thrawn shows up. So kind of starting to read that. I'm probably not going to finish it by then, but starting to read that in anticipation for Ahsoka with Grand Admiral Thrawn and all. There's all those other Thrawn books too, but
I'll check that out. I've been reading that Upside Down. No, it's not Upside
no.
Down. I've been reading Superman Up in the Sky. This
Nice.
is another Tom King written graphic novel.
Nice.
I think he's gonna be Tom King is like one of my favorite graphic comic graphic novel authors. He's great. So
Yeah.
recommend it.
Yeah. So once again, if this is your first time or returning, please be sure to go on Facebook and Instagram and like us and follow us there for more upcoming content. And by the way, we cannot wait for you to see our interview with my dear friend Natalia Nogalich, as you may know her as Admiral Alana Nechayev, coming out very soon. So be sure to stay tuned for that. It should actually be out tomorrow as the time of this airing. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We cannot wait for you guys to see that. It was a wonderful time we had with her, and lovely woman, absolutely amazing woman. And actually, I got her book today in the mail.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So I remember she was going to
Beautiful.
send us one. I
Yes.
couldn't believe. Yep. And she even signed it in there for me.
Oh, beautiful.
So I think yours should be on the way too. I'd imagine, Chris.
Whoa,
Yeah.
wow. What a
I got to text her and let her know I got it.
it was it was extraordinary. Like
Yeah.
she was extraordinary.
It was
That's
extraordinary. Yeah, I can't wait to give her a big hug when I see her in Vegas in August, and hopefully you'll be able to make it out too for a couple days
yeah.
and see it as well. But, anyways, so that's it for us guys. And Chris, I look forward to our review next week with episode 3 of Strange New Worlds, as well as an incredible. I wish I could spoil this right now so badly. I want to spoil this mystery celebrity guest interview we have coming up next Sunday at the time of this recording. So that would be Sunday. The episode will
Yeah.
come out next Sunday, July 2nd, I think it will be. So right before the 4th of July weekend here in the United States. And we cannot wait. It might probably is our biggest guest yet, and we've had some amazing guests. So we really can't wait to share that with you. And that announcement will be coming out early next week at the time of this recording, or the time of this airing. And we cannot wait to share that with you. It'll be awesome. I know, Chris, we're both super excited for it.
Yeah. It's very humbling to have this, have these privileges,
Yeah.
and to be taking part in this. It's amazing, and it's great to meet these people that have created these beautiful universes that we love. And it will be wonderful. Absolutely
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
It really is, because the people that come on with us, they don't have to take time out of their busy schedules to come talk to us, but they do, and we are over the moon appreciative of it. We love having conversations, people getting to know more about them, getting to learn about them and their life and their career. We would not talk about just Star Trek or whatever role or whatever thing they're most famous for. We like to talk about all of it. We like to learn about all of it and learn, quite a bit about who they are, where they came from, their family, their lives, all those types of things. It's just a wonderful time that we do that. We did that with Natalia, and we'll be doing that with our next guests and the other guests we've had on. So it'll be a wonderful time.
It sure will, my friend. Yes, it will. Yes, it
absolutely. So so thanks again for watching and listening all over the interwebs and the globe. We do appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt Podcast.